Maurice Halbwachs, a French sociologist who studied under Émile Durkheim, fundamentally transformed how we understand memory. Before Halbwachs, memory was almost exclusively treated as a psychological phenomenon, something that happens inside individual minds, stored in the brain like photographs in an album. Halbwachs changed this assumption completely. His central argument, developed in his major work, The Collective Memory, is that memory is fundamentally social. We do not remember alone, even when we think we do. Every act of remembering is shaped by the groups to which we belong, past and present, and by the social frameworks that organize our experience of time and space. What makes Halbwach's theory so revolutionary is his insistence that even our most personal memories are not truly our own. When we recall a childhood event, a conversation with a friend, or a moment of personal triumph, we are not accessing some private archive stored in isolation. Instead, we are reconstructing the past using tools, concepts, and perspectives provided by our social groups. Memory is always a reconstruction, never a reproduction. We piece together the past from the standpoint of the present, and the present is always socially organized. This means that memory is not simply a record of what happened, but an active creative process that serves the needs of the groups that sustain it. Halbwachs draws a crucial distinction between individual memory and collective memory, but he insists that these are not separate faculties operating independently. The individual participates in two types of memory. On one hand, we have personal or autobiographical memory, the sense that we remember events from our own lives. On the other hand, we participate in collective memory, the shared remembrances of groups we belong to, whether family, profession, nation, or religious community. These two types of memory are constantly interwoven. When we recall an event from our childhood, we do so within frameworks provided by our family, our school, our culture. The individual memory relies upon collective memory to corroborate, refine, and fill gaps in our recollections. This interdependence becomes clear when we examine what happens when we separate from a group. Consider a professor who has taught for many years. When a former student reminds him of classroom incidents from years ago, the professor may recall nothing. Why? Because the professor never belonged to the group of students in the same way they belong to each other. The class as a living group, the shared experience of those particular students with that particular teacher, dissolved at year's end. For the students, the group persisted in memory because they continued to think about it together. For the professor, there was no such enduring group, so the memories faded. The professor cannot remember because the social framework that would support those memories no longer exists for him. Even when we think we are remembering events that no one else witnessed, Halbwachs argues we are still relying on collective frameworks. Suppose you travel alone and have impressions that your companions could not share. Later, you remember these impressions vividly while they remember nothing. Does this prove individual memory is self sufficient? Not at all. What you recall are not raw sensations but already interpreted experiences shaped by the social groups to which you belong. The traveler who walks through London alone is never truly alone. He walks with the architect who explained the buildings, the historian who described the streets, the novelist who populated the city with characters. These figures represent social groups, and their perspectives become the frameworks through which experience is organized and remembered. Halbwachs provides a powerful explanation for forgetting. We do not forget because memories decay over time like old photographs. We forget because we have lost contact with groups that once supported those memories. When we leave a group, moving to a new city, changing jobs, losing touch with old friends, the memories we shared with that group gradually fade. They become inaccessible not because they have been erased from our brains, but because we have no longer have the social context that would allow us to reconstruct them. The same principle applies to entire societies. When a society undergoes fundamental change, old memories that once seemed central become irrelevant or incomprehensible. The collective memory of a transformed group does not simply continue with some memories lost or others preserved. Instead, a new group conscious emerges with its own frameworks, and the old frameworks become inaccessible. This is why history is not the same as collective memory. History is an attempt to reconstruct the past from external evidence, while collective memory is the living tradition that groups carry forward. While the living tradition ends, we turn to history, but history can never fully restore the living quality of collective memory. Halbwachs makes a distinction between collective memory and history. History is unitary, critical, and concerned with change. It aims to produce a single objective record of the past, placing events in chronological order and treating all facts as potentially equal in importance. Collective memory is multiple, living, and concerned with continuity. Each group has its own collective memory, which preserves only what remains meaningful and relevant to that group's identity. Collective memory does not worry about exact chronology or comprehensive coverage. It focuses on similarities and continuities, on what makes the group feel it has remained the same through time. History begins when collective memory ends. As long as a remembrance remains alive within a group, there is no need to write it down or fix it in an external record. It is only when the group dissolves, when the living connection to the past is broken, that history steps in to preserve what can be preserved through documents, monuments, and written narratives. But historical reconstruction can never fully replace collective memory. The historian stands outside the group and tries to be objective, while collective memory is always the group seen from within. History sees changes and differences. Collective memory sees continuity and identity. History is concerned with the past for its own sake. Collective memory is concerned with the past insofar as it serves present needs. For Halbwachs, time is not a single uniform flow, but a multiplicity of collective durations. Each group has its own way of dividing and experiencing time. The academic year, the religious calendar, the business cycle, and the family's sense of generational time are all different. These collective times are not simply variations on a single abstract time, they are distinct frameworks that organize experience and memory. This is why individuals can move between different temporal works. As you shift from one group to another, you enter a different collective duration. You may think of yourself as having a single continuous life, but your experience is actually divided among the multiple times of the groups you belong to. Some groups have long memories, others short ones. Some groups change slowly, others rapidly. But these differences do not mean that time flows faster or slower for different groups. Rather, each group has its own temporal framework, its own way of dividing up duration and locating events within. Abstract or mathematical time, the uniform empty time of clocks and calendars, is an artificial construction. It results from the need to coordinate the activities of different groups, but no group actually lives within such time. Collective memory anchors itself in the concrete times of specific groups. The date that helps us recall an event is not just a number or a calendar, it is a point within a meaningful sequence of events that matter to our group. We remember because the memory has a place within a collective time that still lives for us. Space, like time, is not simply a physical container but a social framework. Groups engrave themselves upon space in homes, streets, districts, cities, holy places, and marketplaces. These spatial arrangements become the physical basis of collective memory. When we enter a place we once inhabited with a group, we may recover memories that seemed lost. The stones of the city, the layout of the family home, the location of the market, all these spaces carry memories because groups have inscribed themselves upon them. Different groups impose different spatial organizations. Legal space distinguishes between the domains of lord and vassal, master and servant, creditor and debtor. Economic space is organized around places of exchange, markets, shops, stock exchanges, where prices and values are determined. Religious space is divided into sacred and profane, consecrated places where the faithful can recover their religious identity. Each of these spatial frameworks supports a different kind of collective memory. When we move through space, we move through the memories of the groups that have shaped that space. This explains why changing location can be so disorienting. When a group is displaced from its spatial framework, its memory becomes unstable. The homes, streets, and landmarks that anchored its identity are gone. The group may try to reconstruct its space elsewhere, carrying with it the traces and symbols of what it has lost. But the connection between memory and place is never arbitrary. The physical surroundings bear the imprint of the groups that have lived there, and collective memory is inextricably bound to the spaces where it has taken root. Perhaps the most striking illustration of Halbwachs' theory is his chapter on musicians. How do musicians remember music? Unlike words which carry meaning beyond their sound, music is purely sonorous. A sequence of notes has no meaning other than itself. Yet musicians must remember vast repertoire with precision. This is only possible through collective memory. The musician does not remember by storing every sound in individual memory. Musical memory is supported by a system of signs, musical notation, that is created and maintained by the society of musicians. The score, the instrument, the conductor, and the orchestra together form a collective framework that makes musical memory possible. Without the social support, even the most gifted musician would be lost. This example demonstrates Halbwachs' broader point. All memory requires social frameworks. When we think we remember alone, we are deceiving ourselves. Our memories are always organized by the groups that have shaped our minds, and they are always reconstructed in the present through the frameworks those groups provide. Memory is not a private possession but a social phenomenon. We remember because we belong to groups. We belong to groups because we share memories. The two are inseparable. What Halbwachs offers is not just a theory of memory, but an insight into human social life. We are not isolated individuals who happen to come together. We are social beings who become individuals only through our participation in groups. Memory is the thread that connects us across time, and it is woven not in solitary minds but in the shared life of communities. To understand memory is to understand society itself.